What's up, yo? Welcome to the Young Legends podcast, where we teach you the cheat codes to the game of life. I'm your host, Caption, aka Caption Red, and we have the most amazing guest today, Miss Chaunté Lowe. I am excited about this, and I actually wrote a little something to kick this off, so here we go. Shout out to Chaunté Lowe because she's lifting spirits high, an inspiration to our nation with unstoppable drive. She left up in our hearts by doing what is hard, high jumping throughout life, always raising the bar with records in her name by pushing through the pain. She's been a champion, my friends, 4 times an Olympian, and she never stops winning. But wait for the second act, this is just the beginning. A champion of education, a conqueror of cancer, and a voice you need to hear. She's a Jeopardy answer, a legend that's spreading love and hope around the globe. I have 4 words for you. Who is Chaunté Lowe?
Yes. That was awesome.
Thank you. You know what? That's actually my first time doing that. You get the VIP treatment because I was like, you know what? I just can't do a regular intro to Miss Chaunté Lowe. So thank you so much for joining me today on the podcast. How are you?
I am doing good. My cheeks are hurting because that was so good. I'm smiling so hard. That was awesome.
Thank you. I try. Well, I am super excited to have you on the podcast. I saw your story on, line a few months ago, and I was so inspired. My mother was inspired. I was like, hey, take a look at her. And she's seen many of my podcast guests, and she was like, whoa. And you have touched myself, my family, and a lot of other people around the globe. So I'm super excited about this. I always like to start off the podcast with a fun story, an interesting story, a story from your life. And so I was wondering if you'd like to share a story with us today.
Yes, I definitely have one. So it's about maturity. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to tell you about a time when I was not so mature.
Nice. Okay.
I was at a competition when I was younger, and I was so adamant that I needed to start jumping as soon as possible. So at the beginning of a competition, we only have about 15, 20, sometimes 30 minutes to warm up for our jumps before the competition actually begins. Mm-hmm. And there's probably about anywhere from 8 to 30 girls all trying to compete for this small period of time. Mm-hmm. And I noticed that the women were going according to schedule. And this one girl comes late, and she's measuring, and she stands in front of the bar, and she's not moving. And everyone's like, come on, move, hurry up. And I was like, you know what? And I was like, excuse me, can you move? She's like, I'm measuring my mark. So I run and I jumped over her head. And I cleared the bar.
Okay. Yes.
And at the time I was like, I knew that she wasn't that tall. It was a pedestrian height for me to clear. But looking back, oh my gosh, that was such a hothead move to do.
Right.
I wouldn't do it today, but definitely when you're young and excited.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's it's embarrassing. At the time I thought it was cool, but now I look back like, oh gosh, I could have just waited.
Yeah. No, that's a great story. And that was last year, right?
No, right? No, it was definitely several years ago. I don't know who the young lady is, but if it was you, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. Although that's a fun story to tell that you got jumped over by Chaunté Lowe. That's kind of fun. I don't know. I don't know how I would have very mixed feelings about that. But anyways, that's great. So, I've been doing a lot of research on you, and I heard you say that you had a dream to go to the Olympics at the age of 4?
Yes, 4. But at the time, I thought that I was going to be a sprinter. Mm-hmm. And so I'm looking at FloJo like, I'm going to be a sprinter. Had no idea I was going to be a jumper, but definitely wanted to go to the Olympics at that point in time.
That's great. And so as you talk about the Olympics, and it happened 4 times over, here we are. Why is it so important to have a vision like you had a vision in life?
I think that sometimes we do things aimlessly and kind of hoping that we'll get there. But if you don't have like, they call them a lot of different things now, mindset, vision, goal, they're all pretty much the same thing where you have to know where you're going and you can't get on the road. Like I'm going to Disney World and just drive any sort of way. You kind of have to say, okay, I'm going to Disney World. It's 100 miles away. This is how much gas I have. This is the reliable transportation I have. And then once I get there, there's going to be a cost of admission. So there's a lot of steps that go into it. And the same thing with your goals in life. You can't just hope that things will work out. You have to have a vision and then educate yourself on what it will take to actually get there. And that's what I did with the Olympics. I didn't know that's what I was doing, but that's why it ended up working out for me.
Absolutely. And what practical steps and actions did you practice to keep you going towards that vision? Because it's one thing to have a dream. It's a whole nother thing to build your life around it, right?
Yes. Before I actually had the dream to go to the Olympics before I knew how to write. So I would draw pictures of me competing and myself in my uniform, and I draw the crowd in the stadium. And I remember I didn't have the letters, so I would just do circles and like I was writing it. But once I learned how to write, I started writing that vision down, like Chaunté Howard, Olympian at the time. My last name was Howard. And once I got older and developed the skills and the education to really articulate what I wanted, I started writing out the vision. By 2004, I want to be an Olympian on the United States team.
Wow. And you did that.
Yeah, I did.
That's amazing. So writing things down, what else did you do? We can all write things down and create goals, which is important. Obviously.
Research it. Yeah, research it. What is it going to take to actually get there? And, I had to start learning that there are qualifying standards to go to the Olympics. What are those heights and where am I now?
Sure.
And when it's kind of like a puzzle piece. When you start doing the research of what it will take to get where you want to go, you start aligning yourself with the people that will help you get there. So for me, I knew I had to jump 6'4" 3/4 inches, but in order to do that, I had to first earn a scholarship to go to college. So then now I'm like, okay, who do I need to be in the high school sphere in order to get recognized by colleges? Then when I had the opportunity to pick colleges, what college can get me to that 6'4" 3/4"? And so then I started focusing on coaches rather than championships and programs, where the team that I went to, they had never won a national championship in track and field, but the high jump coach there had gotten other high jumpers to the Olympics. So that's was a determining factor in me picking my school. And then I'll say another thing is visual reminders. This high jump bar behind me, as I got older, I put that at the height that I wanted to jump. But before I had a high jump bar, I put a piece of tape at the 6'4" 3/4 inches. So I could look at it every day and know what that height looks like.
Oh,
and make
that's
it practical
good.
And make it real.
Yes, that is fantastic. That is fantastic. And then every time, would you mark it every time you go a little higher, or you just knew that you were an inch or two higher, or how did you go about that?
You know what? I didn't mark where I currently was in relation to the 6'4", but I would look at that height every day. And so when I first put the tape up, I think that my best was maybe 5 feet 9 inches, but it's a far cry from 6'4" 3/4. And then I would just look at that height, and I would try to make it look low to myself. So by seeing it every single day, if anything, I would put a tape that was higher. So I put it at 7 feet, like, well, this is what the men have to jump.
Right.
I only have to jump here to make it look as easy as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And how important were your coaches on helping you get to your success? Because I saw that in the interview, and I was like, that's definitely something I want to ask, but you already kind of answered it. So how important were they?
Yeah, so a lot of people, I think that the coaches don't get the praise that they deserve because I didn't have all the answers. I had never been where I was trying to go. And I think that pride could cause you to say, I don't need anybody else. I got this. I have all the answers. And that's when you get people writing self-help books that have never done anything.
Oh, yes.
But when we've all seen those.
Yeah, no.
But when you when you take the time to find somebody who has the experience and the expertise, and you're willing to submit your own will, like, okay, I'm going to let my pride and my ego go and submit to what the wisdom that you have. I think that it kind of helps you catapult. It doesn't mean that you would never get there on your own, but you don't have to go down the road of all the mistakes. You could eliminate the mistakes and narrow down your goals. And I think that people that submit to a coach get there a lot quicker than somebody who chooses not to. And you, like I said, you could probably do it the other way, but why? Why take longer time?
Absolutely. And that's like the purpose of this podcast, is to help us not get lost on these detours, help these young people not have to figure it out themselves. Because if someone's already done it, then why would you, trial and error your way through it when someone else is like, here is the roadmap. And if you follow it, you will get there faster, happier, and better. So
yes. And even like I grew up in a life where I saw a lot of people that struggled with addiction, alcoholism, or, just things that pulled them and distracted them from where they were trying to go. And I've always been able to learn from somebody else's story. So you could do it in a positive way, but then you could learn from people's negative mistakes as well and not make those same mistakes. So that's why it was really easy for me to not ever get involved in drug abuse or alcoholism, because I knew like that's going to take me away from where I want to go. And so I think that people that are able to grasp that definitely have it easier in life.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's like you're reading my mind, because that was like my next question of getting there, which is, you didn't have great leadership growing up. You came from a broken home. I heard that you and your mom were even homeless at one point. And currently what you're doing is you're writing a book about your experiences growing up. And so for someone who's trying to shake the identity of their parents off of themselves and break the cycle, which is, you've done it, so you can speak to it. What advice do you have for them as far as that goes?
Yeah, so I think that number one, it's kind of shaking off the idea that the negative statistics apply to you and there's no way to break free of them. The cycle only continues if you make the decision to continue the cycle. And I think that really early on, I started making those small decisions that led up to paving out a completely different path. I believe that education is the great equalizer in our country. Like there's so many things you could try, but the difference of having an education is a way to really forge your own path. And so even in going to the Olympics and trying to figure out my own path, I always knew that education was going to be a huge part of that. And so, getting the scholarship was a means to an end. Like, how can I get this piece of paper that says I am qualified to do a profession? How do I put myself in a position that I have income to not be homeless or have the income to be able to provide for my family? And for me, that answer was education. I know maybe 4-year education might not be the answer for everybody, but in my case, it definitely was. And I think that when you look at yourself and you decide what you want, it's easy to make goals that are, I guess, acceptable worldwide. Like, oh, I want to be a lawyer. I want to be this. I want to be that. But sometimes your goals could be, I want to have reliable transportation. I want to have a roof over my head. I want to have X amount in savings. I want to live above the poverty line. And those goals are just as important to forge a path for. So for me, I had goals big and small. And one of my goals was to be a good mother, which, it seemed like a big, not like a big deal at the time, but definitely I was doing steps towards putting myself in the position to do that.
Absolutely. And you've done that 3 times over. So that's awesome. You have 3 children is what I meant.
Not a great mother yet. I'm working at it every day.
No. You are under serving yourself with that statement. No, I absolutely have been, paying attention to all the things that you're doing and the example that you're setting. And, you're being involved with your kids' lives. I mean, that's a big part of it. So it's great. It really is.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, as we talk about education, I know that you're very passionate about STEM education, particularly.
Yes.
Why?
Yeah.
Okay, what's your sales pitch about STEM education? Tell us more on why this is so important. Not everybody should do STEM, obviously, but for those that have the aptitude, why should they pursue it, perhaps?
Yeah, I think like particularly growing up in a household where we are, I have five sisters. So I'm like, I think one, two, three. Yeah, I have five sisters.
Right.
And then, we have 13 female cousins. And then I am mother of two daughters. And I think that traditionally, that particularly in the past, women, females, girls have been discouraged from pursuing educational endeavors that have to do with STEM education as well as professions. And this is evident when you go into, those professions and you see predominantly males. And I think that there are women that have an aptitude for math. And I'm one of them. I absolutely love math, calculus, higher math. Like that's my language. That's my love language. And I think that the world that we're in now and our future is evolving towards careers that are finding scientific breakthroughs. Like right now, the vaccine, that's a big area where we need researchers and we need the information. We need people that have had lifelong learning that can make these educated decisions and help our world. We're in the middle of a pandemic, so it's important. And then as far as technology, I mean, come on, like we're in different parts of the world recording a podcast right now. And and it makes a big world even smaller where we're able to have community and life as we know it can continue to go on. And I think that if there's not a push for that, the world's going that direction anyway. And if you're not prepared for it, it feels like you're just going to be left behind. So I think that instead of waiting till it's too late and you're playing catch up, it's better to get in front of it. And if you have an aptitude for it, there's a lot of cool things in those areas of science. So just putting that out there.
Absolutely. And sometimes I look at people who have those skill sets. I'm like, man, why couldn't I get those? But you get the ones you get and you make the best of it, right? So,
but it's funny because you don't even realize that even though it seems like you don't have a aptitude for it, there's so many different types of engineering. You're like a wordsmith engineer. Like I literally just saw you do it, and it might not seem like it. It's so broad that it's not going to look the same for each person. So
yeah, this is true. Indeed. So I kind of want to pivot because we've talked about a number of things, but I want to talk about something that I thought about a lot because of just my understanding of what happens in the Olympics and things not being as maybe rosy as they're displayed on TV. So when you were competing and you had the inkling that some of these other women were doping, that were on the podium when you should have been, and it turned out that was the case. How did you deal with your deep feelings of injustice that they're winning, you're not, because they're cheating and you're doing the right thing? Because that's really hard, right? I mean, that's just, it would just aggravate me so much if I were in your shoes. But you kept going, and kudos to you. But can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think that's a real thing that a lot of people experience in life.
Yeah. So I think that for me, it started a while back. In 2004, when I made my first Olympic team, it was when the whole Balco drug scandal was going on. I'm competing for my first time in the Olympics, and I'm on a train in Athens, just riding through the city, trying to experience being overseas for the first time. And I'm wearing my USA uniform, and people are like, "Oh, you drug cheat." And I'm like, "Wow, I don't know what you're talking about." And it hurt. But I had to become aware and open my eyes that there was a group of people who were trying to defraud other athletes by cheating and getting an advantage. But the great thing about that time period was that they were actually starting to catch these athletes. It wasn't that it was just beginning to happen. It's that they were starting to catch the athletes. And so when I go back to school and I'm talking to my coach, I'm like, hey, people are cheating. What are we going to do about this? Like, how are we going to make sure it's fair? And he gave me one of the best lessons that I would have in my entire life. He was like, you make the assumption that they're not cheating. And the reason why you make that assumption is because if you, in the back of your mind, believe that they're cheating and that they have an advantage over you, you're not going to train to beat them. You're going to always think that you're supposed to be just below them because you think that they have an advantage that you don't have. And when I realized that, I started training as though everyone was clean, and I did begin to beat them. There's several of the people that did beat me at the Olympic Games, but I had beat several times before. Sadly, I didn't perform as to the best of my ability that I wanted to at the games, but I knew that there's something that could be wrong. But when I stepped on that field and I decided to compete with those people, I believed that they were clean. And that's what I needed to do to cope, to be able to compete. I believe that everything that happens in the dark will eventually come to the light. And so what really needed to be exercised was perseverance and patience. And even though it took 9 years, it eventually came out. And it took 9 years of me consistently being clean, but it made me a better athlete because I had to beat athletes that weren't being fair. And it made me a better person. So instead of looking at it as some negative injustice, I think of it as like, wow, you guys were the best training motivation that a girl could have, because I was training to beat you, even though you weren't clean, but I was doing it clean. So it pulled me to be a better athlete. And that's kind of the mindset that because your mental health can deteriorate if you're thinking about being under an injustice for so long. So I would rather have my mental sanity and get better than try to fix the wrong at the time, because I believe that the system eventually would weed some of those things out.
Yeah, absolutely. And it did. And because of that, you have a medal, and
I do.
You, bring it out. If it's around, bring it out. I want to see it. There it is.
I keep it close. I do. So I have my medal right here.
There you go. There you go. It's fantastic. That's so cool. Oh my gosh. Yes. If I had one of those, I might wear it to the supermarket. And
I have.
Nice. That's great. I love it. That's so fun. Oh, you mean this around my neck? What do you? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Might have been, Olympic, medalist.
I did. I wore it for a week straight, and I was unapologetic about it. I had to wait a very long time to get it.
Oh, sure.
So I did.
Yeah. It was 2016 when that came about. Or
I can't remember if I got it just before 2017 or in 2017. It might have been 2017, but just before, 8 to 9 years later.
Yeah. And the beauty of what you've done with your life is that at the end of the day, you can walk around with your head held high. Your children can look at you and be like, that's my mom, and she was clean. And I just think about, those women who placed ahead of you, who were stripped of their medals. They go everywhere they go. People know who they are and what they've done. And even if they don't, they know what they've done.
Yeah.
And
it's hurtful. It's hurtful because as people, genuinely, I really like the young lady whose medal I have. We've competed together several years. And, we've eaten together. We've spent time together. I knew her before she knew English. I wanted to have conversations with her. Then she learned English, and she actually learned from Sesame Street. And she learned
Nice.
English. Yeah. And so just having those conversations with her and bonding together as mothers, I don't know how things got into her system, but like as a person, she's a beautiful person. So it's definitely very hard.
Yes. And, speaking of, I just want to go back to this. So let me get this right. You went to the Olympics after the birth of each, 04, you didn't have any kids, but 08, 2012, and 2016.
Yes.
Each time I remember you saying something about you had a nursing infant.
Nursing 1-year-old. Yeah.
Can
Yeah.
you talk about what it's like to train as a nursing mother who just, you know, made a human? Yeah, just what is that like?
Yeah, so I love it. I think that the most lessons that I've learned were in those time periods. I think, initially when people found out that my husband and I were expecting, it was like, oh my gosh, are you going to have the kid? Yes, I'm going to have the kid. It's not even an option. Yes, I'm
Sure.
having the kid. And then, oh, are you going to come back? Yes, I'm going to come back. So the first aspect was like naysayers, negative people, or people that believe that you can't do something. How do you push through when people say you can't? That's the first lesson I learned. You ignore them and you keep trucking. And then the second thing that I learned is that after I had the baby, my body was different. I remember my ankles being so weak that I couldn't do skips, which is like something I could do when I was 4. I couldn't skip the way that I needed to. And I just took it one day at a time. Every single day I had to get just an inch better. Like, okay, now I could skip. Or the first mile that I ran is like 10 minutes. Okay, can I run 9 minutes and 50 seconds? It's just every single day I wanted to get better, and I wanted every day to snowball and build off of the day before. And I think that a lot of people, they want to have these big, massive leaps. And the real key is having consistency and doing a little bit at a time.
Sure.
And then I think maximizing your effort or your time efficiency. So I know that at certain times of the day, I have more energy. So I'm not going to wait to the end of the day to train because I'm not getting the best of my body to be able to put that effort towards that Olympic goal. The best time for me to train was like 4, 5, 6 a.m. because I had been up all night nursing, and I'm just going to get tired throughout the day. So when you start figuring out your optimal times of the day to do things, that's when you need to put those things. And I think every young professional, if they could learn themselves and where they are most proficient, they are going to get the best results. And that's why I was able to do it, because I understood where to put certain things in my day.
Yes, absolutely. Wow, that's I picture you getting done nursing and be like, all right, now I'm just gonna go and try to make the Olympics, whatever.
It was always the plan from the time that I found out I was expecting. My goal was to make it to the Olympics, and even when it didn't look like it was something that could happen, it was the goal. So
absolutely. And you just talked about something about knowing yourself, right? And that kind of leads me into another question where, you beat breast cancer, and there's more to it than just that. But the story, from what I understand, is you were doing a self-exam, you felt a lump, you suspected it might be breast cancer, but you were told that you're too young and too healthy for that to happen.
Yep.
So what advice do you have? It's a two-part question. What would you tell young people about advocating for themselves and also listening to their own body, which I think you touched on a little bit, but
yeah. So I think that, you hear advocate for yourself, and it sounds like an amazing, empowering thing to do. But if you don't know the steps or what it actually means, you don't know how to make it a powerful resource for yourself. And advocating for yourself is pushing for what you want medically, pushing for the testing that you want, pushing for the diagnosis that you may think that you need. If you are not satisfied, you keep pushing until you are. And, sometimes you have to be more strategic with it. You have to do the research and say, well, what can I say to get this diagnostic testing? And in my case, what I've learned is that if there's a breast exam or some type of diagnostic test that you want that they will not give you, you say, please make a note of it in my record that you are refusing to give me this test that I'm requesting. 9 times out of 10, they will give you that test, because if you end up having that ailment that they're refusing to test you for, they'll be liable.
right.
And so that's what I've learned through research. And when it comes to young professionals, you have to be the one. And sometimes you have to advocate even against the insurance company. If they don't want to cover something, find a way to get it medically necessary. And sometimes that may mean having to pay for it out of pocket and coming back, and getting it paid for after, but it's important to do that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And keeping them accountable is key, right? Because that's what gets people to do something.
Absolutely. And then what was the second? There was a second part of your question.
Listening to your own body. Yeah.
Yes. Our bodies are made miraculously. I'm on the mathematics side. I'm not on the scientific side, but whenever you're not feeling well, you might get a tickle in your throat, a tickle in your nose. You feel it, maybe if you're having night sweats at night or just something different and off. Even if it's something small, it could be your body sending alarm signals that you want to pay attention to it. And I think that, for me, looking back, my little alarms were going off, but I didn't know what to look for. Mm-hmm. And I think that you can't be scripted and knowledgeable in every single alarm that you should look for. But the place that you could start is knowing what your normal is. Mm-hmm. Knowing that, okay, if I run a mile, I'm probably going to breathe hard for 10 minutes, but then I'll feel fine. But maybe one day you run a mile and you're breathing hard for an hour and then you have chest pains at night, like something like that. You have to be able to know your body. For women, you do the self-breast examinations and you notice you need to know the feel, the look, the shape of your own body. And even for men, the same thing. Men can get breast cancer. You need to know the pigmentation, the shape, the feel, because you're going to be your first line of defense. The doctor's not going to come to your house and say, hey, you sweat all night last night. What's going on with that? You're going to be the person that's going to bring that to a professional's attention. So you are your first line of defense. And it's been widely known that most things that we catch early, we have more options of treatment. The longer you let it go, the fear of going to the doctor or the fear of a bad diagnosis is more likely going to put you in a worse off situation than if you would have just went in the first place. So that's my soapbox right there.
That's a good soapbox. And speaking of which, so you beat breast cancer, then you were like, okay, I'm now going to go out for the Olympics. Obviously, a lot of the stuff that you said earlier about your mile times being all off and whatnot happened. And also, after that, you beat COVID, or you caught COVID. What did both of those things do to your training regimen and to your body?
Yeah, I wish that it was as sane as the way that you described it. I actually decided to go to the Olympics in the middle, in the beginning of the diagnosis and the beginning of treatment. And it was really because I knew that women were being diagnosed with breast cancer at alarming rates, and younger women, fit women. And I felt like if my story could save lives, I wanted to get on any microphone, news article, podcast, you name it. I wanted to be on it to share my story so that women might look at themselves and potentially save their lives. So that was the goal from the beginning. But in the middle of doing so, training was going phenomenally. All those lessons that I told you earlier that I learned from being a mother were what I used to train through chemotherapy. So I was kind to myself. I took it one step at a time. I figured out what times were optimal for me to train. And I really definitely believed that I was going to make that Olympic team. But then another part of that is you can control what you can control, and you have to just kind of roll with the punches of the things you can't control. And in April, our whole entire family got COVID. And that probably was more difficult than pregnancy, more difficult than the chemotherapy. Well, I'll say, it was similar. I'll say it was similar because for chemotherapy, there's different medications you could take for nausea. There's, you know what to expect, where the COVID-19, I didn't know what to expect. And there was no treatments that I could really take to alleviate symptoms. And I really didn't know the permanent impacts that it would have. And so I tried to force myself to go out and run, and immediately I felt a throbbing pain and inflammation in my chest that let me know that there was something going on with my heart. My lungs did not have the capacity that they normally did. And then running 100 meters, not even a mile, 100 meters, I was completely winded. And I knew that wasn't normal. So I had to pull back and I had to stop, because I knew that there was a potential for permanent damage and I couldn't risk it. And so that completely took me out of the running of being able to qualify for the Olympics, and it broke my heart.
Sure.
But at the same time, I had to look back and be like, wait, the goal was to get this message out about breast cancer awareness and early detection. And we had reached over 300 million people.
Oh, that is fantastic.
So I was like, well, it's not all lost. It worked out.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, that's so cool. 300 million people.
300 million.
That's like multiple Michael Jackson albums or something.
It was great. It was because all the people like you that heard the story and felt compelled to reach out to my team and give me the opportunity to share your platform. And so thank you so much for doing that. This means so much to me.
Sure.
And hopefully, this story causes somebody to do a self-breast exam and saves lives.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Early detection and prevention is, I'm going to say the cliche, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, right? And so
absolutely.
Yeah. Speaking of prevention, we are, and I don't want to get divisive or anything like that, but we are, like you said, in the middle of a pandemic.
Yeah.
There are some people still who are not taking COVID seriously. What message do you have for them? And again, it's not about, being, hey, you're a science denier, whatever that phraseology is, but this affects all of us.
Yeah.
And so what would you say to them, in regards to this?
Yeah. So I'll just, all I could do is share my story. I had the opportunity to get the COVID vaccine on a Wednesday. And my daughter had a track meet or a volleyball game or something was going on in my life to where I was like, I'll get it next week. And by Friday, everybody in my house was getting sick. So it was literally that quick. My daughter went on a field trip, I think on that Wednesday. And so by Thursday, like that evening, she was already like, she couldn't go to school. She had the low grade fever. She wasn't feeling well. By Friday, everybody was coughing a little bit. And, we tested positive for COVID by that Monday. As a mother, looking at my kids and just thinking that there statistically was a likelihood that I could lose one of them. I couldn't fathom losing a single one of my children. Like I can't say, well, at least if 2 out of 3 are here, like that was not an option.
Yeah.
Then with me already having had my health challenges, I was very scared for my own life. I said goodbye to my children. I said goodbye to my husband, everything that I could think of, because with cancer, that's a slow, long process. With COVID, it was a 21-day process that we were losing people very, very rapidly, very quickly. And I just tried to say as many things to them as possible as I could say. And then I couldn't even imagine my kids losing both myself and my husband. It was actually my husband who had the worst case of COVID, I'll say, where he was struggling. And so I'm sitting here with that story, and I'm not trying to push people one way or another. I just say that I wish that I would have went and got my vaccine that day.
Sure.
I wish that I would have. And now I'm in a position where I can't get the vaccine yet. My white blood cell count is too low. And so per the CDC recommendations, it's not recommended for people in my particular medical case right now to get it. And I'm going and checking regularly to see if my white blood cell count is up to where I'm eligible to get the vaccine.
Sure.
And it's not, I'm not pro-vaccine. I'm not anti-vaccine. I'm just saying, as a mom, I would have rather taken my chances. This is me. I would rather taken my chances with the vaccine than I did with COVID, and seeing that I could have lost one of my kids, or my kids could have lost their parents. And that's just me. So if I think that for people that are apprehensive, decide what it would take for you to feel comfortable and see if you can get the knowledge and information that would make you feel comfortable, rather than just, I don't want to.
Sure.
And think about, look at your kids,
Mm-hmm.
Look at your, look at your family.
Mm-hmm.
If you feel comfortable that if COVID came into your household, that everybody would be okay, then that's one thing. But
Mm-hmm.
I particularly, when I was put in that situation, I wished that Wednesday I would have gotten the vaccine instead. But that's me.
Right. And so going back to the statement of your husband getting the worst of it, your husband is a fit,
Yes.
former athlete, high level, just
Yes.
like you.
Yeah.
And that was, I mean, when you said that, I didn't hear that part. And that is
Yeah.
a surprise and a half. So,
yes, he is fit, 40 years old with a six pack still, probably closer to 8, like,
Sure.
like works out every
Sure.
day. No other prior problems of heart issues, perfect health.
Mm-hmm.
And he was the one that was struggling to breathe. He was the one that was coughing till he almost threw up. Like, he was the one
Sure.
dealing with those. And there's no way of knowing how you will react to it. He's not overweight. He's like 6'6", 215, 220.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Like, that's pretty fit.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate that.
Hey, no problem.
Yeah. Well, we're coming up on time right now. There's a couple quick questions I'd like to ask you if you have
yes,
time.
I have time.
Yeah,
we started a little late, so it's good.
Okay. So first off, what does it mean to you to represent Team USA? Because I tell you what, I watched the Olympics and man, I mean, I feel great just watching. I can't imagine what it would be like to actually have the red, white, and blue out there in the world. So tell us more about that.
Man, okay. It's hard to put into words, but you have to understand, like, the Olympics as a whole. You're going to a place with approximately 10,000 other athletes from all over the world, from all different sports, coming together with the pride of their country. I don't know what else we do where we bring all the different countries together to showcase their abilities and their pride in their country. I don't know. So with the Olympics, we go there as a team. We're strong. We're united. We are very skilled in the sports that we participate in. And back home, we have our communities, our family, our colleges, just all cheering for us and wanting us to do well. And when we do well, it's not just people that we know that celebrate us, or celebrate with us. It is our entire country that celebrates us. And they see, and our teams are so diverse. We have people of many nations and many backgrounds and many cultures and many religions, all being able to be free and compete together. And so the people back home see a little bit of themselves in our athletes. And then even so, if we have like mixed nationality or mixed race athletes representing your country, even their countries see a little bit of pride in the United States because they could see a little bit of themselves. So I think that understanding the enormity of that helps you kind of get a sense of, like, when I go to the Olympics and I get to put on the red, white, and blue, I'm carrying a legacy that spans centuries, and I get to be a small part of history. And I think that there's nothing like it. And I definitely don't take it for granted. I got my United States shirt on right now. And I'm proud to be a part of that,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Yeah. I'm getting goosebumps over here just hearing you talk about it. So that's great. Oh man. That's great. Well, I guess my final question for you before we wrap up is there something that, you would like to leave on, or a question that you wish I had asked that I didn't, or some other, nugget of information, life truth, whatever it is that you want to share that, we haven't covered thus far?
Yeah, I think like probably expounding a little bit on the question we just talked about. And I think that we have a very complicated history in this country, especially being African American, representing Team USA. But I think that when I look into the Olympic Village and I see a 7-foot Yao Ming and like a 4'8" Simone Biles, they could not be more different. But and I know that Yao Ming did not represent Team USA, so I'll say an 8-foot Shaquille O'Neal. But they could not be more different. But they each had a part to play in the Olympics, and it made the Olympics beautiful. Nobody's going to go and watch Shaquille O'Neal playing by himself. Right. Nobody's going to watch Simone Biles just flipping just by herself with no element of competition. But when we embrace the differences and that they're differences that make them unique, it's when they come together that makes the Olympics so beautiful. And so I think that in a time of such civil unrest, instead of trying to point out everyone's differences, let's figure out how they fit together and not try to be the same. That'd be boring. Right. We're all different and we all serve a different purpose. But when we could start figuring out how to move together as one body, then we could eliminate a lot of this angst that we have towards one another. And so, you know, I think that that's what I really focus on when I do a lot of my motivational speaking is that we have to embrace our differences as a strength. Yes. And definitely that's what makes me proud to be an American, because we have done that and we're working towards that.
Yeah. And I think part of the richness, and America's not the only country with a ton of diversity in it, but, you know, part of the richness that America brings is that we do have a lot of people here that are different, and the cultures and the backgrounds and the stories. And I mean, it's just, you know, it's just wonderful. And, you know, here we are, you know, 330 million people who, we do have our differences, but we have so much in common as well. And I think a lot of people forget about that. And so thank you for bringing that together and, you know, helping congeal us. That's great. It's great. Well, we are almost out of time. I would like to wrap up. What I like to do when I do my podcast episodes is I like to end with some freestyle rapping. So that's what we're going to do. We'll talk a little something about what we just talked about. And here we go. Can you hear that? Yo, all right, here we go. Yo, I put in a promo, talk about Flojo, Chaunté Lowe. She is the next iteration, quite just amazing, jumping over bars, kind of like a star. She do a bunch of things, and that's what she brings, a whole bunch of patriotic things to America. That's what I'm saying. She just understood. She's not a statistic. She comes through, she's gifted, doing a bunch of things up in STEM, and that's what I say. She just sends a whole bunch of love, a whole bunch of understanding. You got to advocate for yourself as a woman and also a man. And that's the plan. Come on through. Keep on reaching. Keep going higher. Keep understanding. You are just fire. You just got to understand yourself and pay attention. Words that I mentioned, know that you got a whole bunch of potential. And that's what I say. She speaks from the mental. She speaks from the heart. And that's what I'm saying. She never miss a mark. That lady, she's a spark. She's doing a bunch of things, beating cancer. And that's what I'm saying. Yo, she's just a dancer. Every time she goes through over the bar. And that's what I say. She goes quite far, doing a bunch of things. That's what I'm saying. That lady right here, writing them books, really off the hook, helping people understand that they gotta protect their health. It's all about prevention. Yo, I just mentioned a whole bunch of rhymes. Yo, I'm just sending a whole bunch of hope, just like her. Team USA, just all day. How she just came through, overcame the obstacles, showed the people nothing is impossible. That's what I'm saying all freaking day. Chaunté Lowe, basically, you know, that lady quite crazy. Did a whole bunch of things that were quite improbable, but so can you. Come on through. And that's what I say with these words that I spew. I spit off the top, and that's how I go. And that's what I said with a freestyle flow.
Flow, 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 flow.
Yes, sir. Good stuff. Good
you
stuff.
Have too much fun. You have too much fun.
You know, I try. I encapsulated a few things, I think. But yeah, you know what? I'm so pumped about this. This is so great. I kind of want to edit it and release it tomorrow. That's not on the podcasting schedule. You're messing everything up, dude. People are like, what's this? And then they play it and they're like, oh, this is amazing.
Wait a little bit because it's October. We could do it during Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So.
Oh, yeah. We could totally do that. That's fantastic.
So you don't have to wait too long. We're just 10 days away.
Yes, I will. You know what? I'm holding it until Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Absolutely. Good times. So, Chaunté, we didn't get to talk about your motivational speaking. I mean, you mentioned it, but tell us more because people need to hear your story and your voice and everything that you're bringing. So share what you do.
Yeah, so I feel like I've lived 1,000 lives in one lifetime. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of groups that are having a hard time dealing with resilience, figuring out ways, peak performance, what are the steps? People say, work hard, motivation, determination, and they don't have those quantifiable steps. What can I do today to get to where I want to go? And so I'm encouraging those groups. I talked a little bit about it, but through the eyes of the Olympic Village, what does diversity look like and how could we incorporate it and embrace it versus seeing it as a threat to our society? And I definitely love being able to share my experience and just sometimes I just talk about the Olympic experience. It's great. It's filling for me. And in a world that we are in a very difficult time with COVID-19, with, financial crisis, with civil unrest, we need a bit of hope. And I'm the person who sees things through rosy colored glasses and figure out a way to help people do the same. So I definitely love what I'm doing and I do it every single day.
Absolutely, every day. That's fantastic. And as far as the groups that you speak to, I guess it's, obviously companies, anywhere else that you want to just kind of mention?
Yes, companies, schools, in the education space, universities, small business meetings, large business meetings, conferences. I really don't like to say any group's too small or any group's too large for the message. And I'm a little bit different. I don't have a one message that I speak all the time. I do customized messages. So it'll be a series of meetings and I kind of see what it is that you need. And we figure out the best stories and the best talks that would help you accomplish what you need for your group. So that's what I do.
Absolutely. And you have a book coming out.
I do.
Okay. Does the book have a title yet so people can look for it later or no? It's fine if it doesn't. Okay, no worries.
It doesn't, but it will be through Scholastic. So it is as a children's book. However, I wrote it in such a way that adults will enjoy it. So if you kind of think of Shrek, where it's like for kids, but adults really, really love it, that's how I've written the book.
That's fantastic. So I will make sure to post about that when it comes out, and then I'll just be waiting in the meantime. Okay, so one last thing: how can people connect with you online?
Yeah, so I am revving up on LinkedIn. I found us a great place to meet people and communicate with people. So LinkedIn's just my name, Chaunté Lowe.
Chaunté Lowe, and you do have an Instagram. Okay, cool. So I'll tag both of them. Okay. Some of the listeners might not be into the LinkedIn yet.
Look, even if you're young, if I could give you one bit of advice, get on LinkedIn quickly.
Sure.
Because when you start wanting to make baller moves, that's the place to go.
I'm telling you. I made a baller move by messaging you and getting you on my podcast. So I am the
thank you.
Case.
I made a baller move by responding and being a part of this podcast. So we both win.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. This has been a blast. I'm glad that we finally got to connect. And I'm so pumped about putting this out in October. And here we are.
Well, thank you for having me and thank you for your patience because I have been the worst with scheduling. I apologize for that, but I'm so happy that we did this.
No, it's perfectly fine. You were worth the wait, so no worries.
Aw, thank you.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks so much. Have a great day.
All right. Thank you too. Bye.
All right. So that's the episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned a lot from it. And I hope you put what you learned into practice. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to hit the follow button so you don't miss future episodes. And also, if you would please rate and review this podcast, that would be super helpful in getting the word out about it. All right, so that's all I got for now. Until next time, peace.